Hi, this is Gurasi Singh, and you're listening to my Thick Accent podcast. So, I recently read this article by wellness.ca about guilt culture. Let me share with you what I read. So, a guilt culture forms when a society uses guilt to promote socially acceptable behaviors. The emotion of guilt is used as a tool to emphasize self control, feel indebted to certain people and circumstances, and staying within the boundaries of cultural norms. Many older siblings in South Asian households are directly reminded of how their actions will affect the fortunes and opportunities of their younger siblings. An example I have witnessed multiple times is when elder children are encouraged to get engaged or married early and to the gender that is acceptable by the society. Well, my guest today didn't want to fit in that box as it will stop her for being who she is. She moved to Canada in 2016 from Sri Lanka. Before moving, she was a private legal practitioner for 8 years, often taking on pro bono cases to aid underprivileged clients in the community. It wasn't until she immigrated to Canada that she felt there was another path to providing support. She's a board member in the Gender and Sexual Diversity Board of Calgary Police Service and co-chair for Immigrant Advisory Table member at Calgary Local Immigration Partnership, as well as an advisor at Faculty of Social Work's Community Advisory Committee. She has also been invited to speak at many platforms such as Mount Royal University, University of Calgary, and nonprofit organizations such as Diverse Cities, Distress Center, and Immigrant Services Calgary. Let's learn more from her about her story that she wrote and refused to be in other people's stories, just a footnote. Please welcome Dakshima Dilipani.
Hi, Grace. Thank you for having me.
So, before we talk more about how you decided, Dakshima, not to be a footnote in other people's story, I want to take you back to the time you spent in Sri Lanka, especially Colombo. Tell us about your formative years and how was it like growing up there?
Yeah, definitely. So I was a regular kid growing up. I was the eldest of my family. My both my parents were government servants. So we were like upper middle class family, and I have a younger sister.
Hmm.
My parents gave me freedom to do whatever I want to do in my life in my younger years. I had a bunch of young boys as my friends because I went to a mixed school. Both boys and girls were
Hmm.
there, so I played cricket with boys. I played other games with boys most of the time. It was not a problem. People look at me as a tomboy, but I didn't really understood it. Till the later years of my life, I went to all girls school. Then I went to university to pursue my higher education. I have a bachelor of arts and also a law degree, and I practiced, as you mentioned earlier, as a lawyer for almost 8 years
Hmm.
in Sri Lanka. And I also have postgraduate diploma in criminology and criminal justice. So that's my sort of like education and my formative years, how I figured my life out.
So, how did you get into law? What encouraged you or motivated you to pursue law?
Well, I always wanted to be a doctor, but
Hmm.
but all of a sudden I just switched interest, and I realized there's because I'm good at writing, I'm good at speaking, so
Hmm.
I thought this is something that I should pursue. And I've seen so many people before I become a lawyer that
Hmm.
there are so much underserved, underprivileged people that need support. And I thought, this is something that I can like, be the voice to the voiceless, or be really support to those who do not have a voice. So that was something that I decided in around the ages of 16, 17,
Hmm.
that this is something I want to do.
Is there something, Dakshima, about Sri Lanka you feel like people don't know about it? Is it something that you can share?
Definitely. Just like India and other South Asian countries or many countries in the world, Sri Lanka has been colonized by British
Hmm.
and Portuguese and Dutch before, but British towards the end. They left us in 1948, but the penal code that they've given is still in existence, and especially certain penal code sections. prohibits people of the same sex to be together,
Hmm.
depending on their sexual orientation. For example, if a man want to be with a man in like in romantically
Hmm.
and sexually, they cannot. It's a criminal offense under the penal code. There's nothing specifically mentioned about women, but obviously it's a taboo,
Yeah.
and it's looked down upon. And the societal pressure is something that's really real in Sri Lanka and other countries in the far south, I would imagine. And yeah, it's pretty, it's a harsh reality that people have to live. I've known many people who've been attracted to same gender,
Hmm.
but it's really difficult um, when it comes to, you have to face the realities of life.
Yeah.
So you cannot be your authentic self. You cannot be with the person you love, because that's what's prescribed by the society. So you are basically, your hands are tied.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the societal norms I mentioned initially in my introduction as well, that you are asked to fit in that certain box. Definitely, it happens a
Mhm.
lot in our South Asian communities that one has to prescribe to those norms and traditions that have been in place from, I don't know, from decades, and one has to just follow it
Agree.
because they've been coming up from the past, and their elders have been following it,
Yes.
and they have to follow the same. But people should understand that things have changed now. We are living in a new world, an absolutely new world, where there are all kinds of people that live in the world. We'll
Mhm.
definitely unfold more of this, but let's talk about the decision to move to Canada. And you came as a permanent resident. Tell me, Dakshima, how was the whole process for you like? Was it difficult for you, like coming from Sri Lanka? Like, for example, from India,
Mhm.
it's not that difficult, but it does take like sometimes for some people it takes like a couple of years. For some people it takes like a couple of months to get the permanent residency. So how was it like for you being from Sri Lanka?
No, definitely. I mean, immigration process. I've heard and seen that it takes a lot of time and effort from people's sides. I was fortunate; it took me, I believe, 1.5 years, almost 2 years,
Hmm.
for the whole process to come as a permanent resident. And since I had those degrees to produce and to show that I am needed,
Yeah.
that was something I think that was on my side. Before coming to Canada, I tried to move to Australia,
Hmm.
which didn't really work out. So Canada was the next choice, actually.
So is it like you were planning to go to Australia to study or for other purposes?
Yeah, in Australia, so there's I think if you are in the legal field, there are certain boxes that you would fit into, and then
Okay.
you can apply to that. But it was like removed, that whatever that category was removed when I was applying. So Canada, I mean, if you have certain degrees, you get points,
Mhm.
and that's how I was able to come to Canada.
So it was the first time, I believe, that you were really moving out of your home country, right? So how was the whole mindset like of yours, and how was the reaction from your family?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I fell in love. So I fell in love with a woman. That was the reason I decided to move away from Sri Lanka.
Hmm.
And for me, I didn't really think about what would happen after that.
Hmm.
For me, it was the process and that journey. I never really thought about, okay, what would happen when I go? What would happen? Would I have support? Or I didn't really think about any of those things. I just
Hmm.
want to escape. I just want to, like, because the existing reality is so binary. Like, you are a woman, you have to marry a man. And although my parents didn't like force me to, I
Hmm.
was living in a society that, as I was mentioning before, prescribed that,
Yeah.
expected that, asking all the time, asking about, oh, why you're still single and all those things.
Yeah.
So immigration was a way of escaping for me. And my mother didn't really like it at all, because me and my mother, both my parents and myself, we are very close to each other, and also my extended family, my aunties, my grandma, my uncles, my sister, and all those people. We were very close to each other, so they didn't really expect me to move
Mm.
countries, because as the eldest, they expected, and I wanted to look after them, as we all do in our cultures, to be there for them when they are getting old. So
Mhm.
this was unexpected, and my mother, she was not happy at all. My
Mhm.
father was like, okay, let's. I don't say he was pretty cool about it, but he was okay compared to my mother initially.
So if you didn't tell them that you were moving for love, what did you tell them? That why are you going to Canada? Why is that?
No, I say Canada is a country of opportunities, and
Mhm.
I can practice law in Canada. I can build a life there, and I think I was 33ish at the time.
Mhm.
I was a grown up, although I was living with my parents, which was
Mhm.
pretty customary for South Asian folks.
Yeah.
Uh, they didn't really. I don't think they read much into it.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just bit. I sort of blindsided them.
Hmm.
If I'm being bluntly honest
Yeah.
with yourself, so and myself.
So you landed in 2016 to Canada. Tell us
Mhm.
about your first day. How was it like?
Yeah, so I moved here because one of the family friends was here, and that person was didn't turn out as I expected to be. I mean, obviously, when you move to a new country, people have their own priorities and
Of
ways of
course.
life, and you cannot imagine and expect the same treatments or support that you would have in your home country, which took me some time to realize. So
Mhm.
it was really like I was at a loss. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? I was crying in my room, and there was
Mhm.
no internet, so I couldn't talk to my then partner or my parents properly. I was
Mhm.
just whole, it was like night of nightmare.
I mean, I'm sure it must be so difficult when you come and you think that you had like a familiar a person to go to, but like you said, I
Mhm.
remember you also saying earlier in our conversation that everybody here in Canada is in it to win it. And it's not that people don't
Great.
want to help, they genuinely don't have the time to really listen to you or really like, do like have like a heart to heart conversation with you. I know that how hard it is being an immigrant as well, to come into this new world where life has never existed before, and you have to find your new network, new connections. So definitely, I can imagine how it would be. So I remember that you did mention earlier also that you came for love, but then I added to
Mhm.
that, you came for love, but you stayed for yourself because um, that relationship that you came for didn't really work out. And before moving, Dakshima, did you at any point had like iota of it that what if it doesn't work? What if this doesn't take us anywhere? Did you like have like the slightest of thought about it or not at all?
No, no, that was so like unlike me. I usually plan my life not to the minutest of details, but I usually have like a pretty good idea where I'm heading. Like if I
Mhm.
want to go somewhere, I go early, I scan the place, I check out what's needed, and so I'm pretty prepared in my life. I couldn't come so far if I'm not.
Mm.
But this was the one time I took like a serious risk in my life,
Mhm.
which I had no backup plan. I had
Mhm.
no backup plan. I was so sure this is gonna work out. I was so sure that person's gonna come and be with me. That was a woman, by the way. I don't know whether I mentioned before. So
Mhm.
I thought it's gonna be, yeah, like amazing love story that I would end up with the person I want to be in my life. And
Mhm.
there's always twist to our lives, and
Yeah.
we cannot plan our destiny.
So just for my listeners and for me as well, if you can give us like a crux of what exactly happened and what didn't really turn out to be, because that really shaped you the person you are today, and that's what encouraged you to to do the work that you are doing today and also to follow the career that you end up following.
So, as I was mentioned, I moved to Canada, and I want to be the person I wanted to be with the person I love. So, but as we all know, life is not linear, and it's full of twists and surprises.
Mm.
Um, when you are in two different countries, the amount of trust and understanding and love you need to overcome that distance is humongous.
Mhm.
And time out of 10,
Mhm.
long distance relationships in research have not worked out, which I
Mhm.
didn't read the research, of course.
Mhm.
So, and the reason was that there was not one reason. It's a continuation, and it one day it just exploded. I came to be a lawyer. I realized that when I went to faculty of law, that I cannot be a lawyer just like that. So there's a process, and it takes money and time. So then I had to go have like another plan about it.
Mhm.
And then the university starts next year, so I had to go and find a job. I came in July, and then soon it was winter, and then there was nobody talk about what winter brings, mental health challenges. Like
Mhm.
there's so much like snow, you don't know what to do with it. And all these things and isolation and culture shock and all these things was happening for like months. And
Mhm.
the person on the other side of the world would not understand these things.
Hmm.
And they don't trust you, and then they start accusing you and gaslighting you and calling names and slamming the phone down, and
Mhm.
it's real. It took me time to realize it, that this is not going to work. So much makeups and breakups happened in between. Yeah, around 2017, I think I realized that this is like beginning of end of 2017, beginning of 2018, I would imagine.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I realized after a year and a bit, I realized that this is not going to work.
So, Lakshma, if anybody, any of our listeners who might be in the same situation, I hope not, but if he or she is, what advice would you give to that person?
I mean, honestly, don't have too much hope. I mean, I'm sure sometimes love can like survive these sort of tests, but it's such a complicated process that it takes so much life out of you, and it leave you like dry, and it leave you like helpless and I don't know,
Mhm.
alone. So
Hmm.
unfortunately, like, really think of you first, because there's nobody to think about you when you are in those situations, because always you put other people first in your life, like, we all are, and there's nobody look out for you. So I would encourage to think about your mental health and your well-being, and holistically think about you
Hmm.
first. Uh, and I know a person who's moving from Edmonton to Calgary, and they were with their partner, and they broke up before coming to Calgary.
Okay.
Uh, I mean, because that happened like very recently, and I don't know that person that well, but I was like, wow, I mean, I can see why.
Mhm.
Edmonton to Calgary is 3 hours. But if you are moving to Calgary,
Mhm.
and that is where you're going to be for your work life play,
Yeah.
you that's realistic.
Mhm.
You will be moving away from that community and that life you had. So I'm not that strong. I mean,
Mhm.
it took me years to figure that out, but that's what was happening around us. So
Mhm.
just be mindful of these things. Life will never give you what you expect. It's always there's a twist to it.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's for the better for you.
Mhm. So, despite having 8 years of experience, actually, like you said, you were asked to start from scratch. You could not practice law, and you went back to school to study again at University of Calgary, and you decided to study social work. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so I went to Faculty of Law, and obviously I was informed that there's a process and there's time involved, there's money involved. Basically, I had to go back to law school. I came out of Faculty of Law, and in front of me, Faculty of Social Work. And what is social work? We don't have it in Sri Lanka. So I went to Faculty of Social Work, and I met with an advisor, and they were saying, okay, this social work is about people. Um, make them empowered and things like that. This is what social workers do and stuff. So, and I was like, oh, this is very much like the pro bono work I did while I was
Hmm.
doing my law
Yeah.
practice. So I was intrigued by it definitely, and since I had couple of degrees, there were like an exemption of couple of years for me, so that
Hmm.
sound good as well, because then I don't need to go back to school for 4 years.
Yeah.
I just have to go back to school for 2 years, which would save money and time. Yeah, that's how I ended up becoming a social worker. I graduated in 2019, but it was not a linear process, as I was mentioning. I had to work graveyard shifts in 7-Eleven,
Hmm.
and a couple of times I was at gunpoint. So it was not sort of like a linear life. It was tough life.
What did you mean gunpoint?
So because most of the time in graveyard shifts you work on your own,
Hmm.
and when I was working at like midnight shift, so
Hmm.
it's like 11 a.m. to 7 a.m. People come with different addictions. Houseless people, they
Hmm.
come and they ask, demand things, and sometimes they have knives, sometimes they have broken bottles, uh, and you had to deal it all by yourself sometimes. So it was not the adventure I was looking for.
Didn't you feel like you should leave that job and find something better?
Yeah, so since I was a student at the University of Calgary, I went to student union and I explained the inconveniences and the life I had to go through, and then I was able to get a job at student union. They have like a convenient store inside university,
Oh, okay.
so it's like inside a building where there are securities and only young people who study there, and professors and people who work in university come to that store. So I was able to work there. So it felt safer and good.
So then you eventually also worked with the Center for Newcomers. You also worked at Immigrant Services Calgary as a program facilitator.
Mhm.
And then now you work as a project coordinator for Center for Sexuality for community driven population and public health training. Tell us about that role.
Yeah, definitely. So right now I work at Center for Sexuality as a project coordinator. So we got funding from federal government, almost 3 million, $2.8 million to
Mhm.
work with underserved communities. So underserved communities includes rural and remote youth, people with development disabilities, uh, two indigenous communities to work with us for this pilot project. So we have partnered with Sutina and Story Nakoda, and towards LGBTQ plus community. So
Mhm.
what we do, in my role, I work with healthcare providers. So
Mhm.
healthcare students and practicing healthcare providers. We know there's such a huge gap between these communities and healthcare providers,
Yeah.
and healthcare providers are not really comfortable and supporting sometimes because they don't know where these people are coming from.
Mhm.
So intention of this project is to bridge that gap between these communities and healthcare providers, and
Mhm.
give these folks a proper support that they all deserve. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting project.
So now let's just talk about your journey of really not deciding not to live a second life anymore. So under the Penal Code
Mhm.
of Sri Lanka, which it inherited from British rulers in 1886, the same-sex conduct is a criminal offense, and it was not possible
Yes.
for you to live the life you wanted to back in your home country. But Canada
No.
doesn't question you, your beliefs, your likings, or even your love. And you found
Mhm.
your class to be a safe environment to come out. Tell us about that.
Yes, definitely. So, when I was in University of Calgary, Faculty of Social Work, there was a class by Dr. Lisa Lorenzetti. She was a professor in University of Calgary, and she was such a. I felt safe around her because she's an ally. She has supported the community for a long time.
Mhm.
So one day in her class, I came out, and it was surreal because there was two kinds of sort of uh, people
Reactions?
in the class. Some were like yeah, some people were like, oh yay, and they came and hugged me, and that's how they expressed their support. Some people were like, oh my god, like Dakshima is like bad news. So,
Hmm.
and they were like stayed away from me. It's just that simple. It's just like so binary, that black and white.
So tell us about those bad reactions, because it's important to talk about the reactions of the people who still live in a bubble.
As we all know, Canada is such a multicultural country, and we have people from different parts of the world,
Hmm.
different diversity, different religions, different belief systems, and they come with those to Canada.
Hmm.
So in my class, there were people who were born here, people who immigrated, and most of the time, unfortunately, the people who immigrated didn't believe in same sex relationships. Uh, I'm not like generalizing it. I'm talking about
Hmm.
specific class I was at the time, and so they felt that this was like not something they would support. And some were saying that they would pray for me. Some would not even acknowledge my partner when they meet her.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was simple as that. They didn't like that.
I remember you also sharing that you were telling that I'm still the same person who I was 5 minutes ago, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just such a yeah. I mean, initially I tried to like bridge gap between these my so-called friends and myself,
Hmm.
but then I realized that doesn't really matter what other people think. That's the whole purpose I came to Canada, to be myself and my authentic self.
Hmm.
So I stopped caring about what other people think about me, because if I'm happy with myself, if my parents are happy to see where I am at,
Yeah.
I don't think anything else matters.
So obviously you knew the impact it had on your mental health. You knew how hard it is to accept who you are. So in 2020 you decided to launch Dilipani, which happens to be your middle name and also means a guiding lamp, and you call this organization a sign of hope for those struggling with their sexual identities. Tell us all about that.
When I came out to my parents, I believe it's like early 2018, my mother cried for months, and she didn't really thought I had it in me to like feel the wrath of the society for the rest of my life. And my father, he listened to me, and he never really wanted to talk about it until like last month,
Hmm.
like no, November last year.
Mhm.
So so I realized that parent support, or support of your natural support, so your caregivers, your parents, your loved ones, is really important to
Mhm.
you when you come out, if you can have them. Sometimes it's not safe to come out to your parents or your community. I totally understand that, but if you can have it, that's great. So that's the sole reason. And also, when I came out in 2017, 2018, I realized that the mainstream organizations did not really resonated with me. I could not feel that I would. Obviously, I'm not going to fit into those organizations
Yeah.
because they are already established for a certain way and certain folks. So that's why I created Dilipani for people, just like your thick accent podcast, right?
Yeah.
People who look like me, people who speak like with an accent,
Yeah.
people from all parts of the world, or people who are here, who are born here, and who doesn't feel connected to whatever's out there. So Dilipani provides support for people who are coming out. I act as a mediator between their families and themselves, and really helping them. And
Mhm.
also, I do a lot of motivational speaking in different organizations, post secondaries, because I think a story of resiliency is really important. We always talk about vulnerabilities, but we really don't talk about how
Mhm.
intersectionality helps us, and also our resilience help us. As immigrants, we have to be resilient. We have to go through these seven hoops, because
Yeah.
nobody's here for us. We have to be there for us. So
Mhm.
I think that is the important lesson that I've learned from my life so far, 7 years in Calgary. Yeah, Dilipari is out there for people who need me, and I am dedicated to support them, because I didn't have anybody when I came out. I had to figure everything out by myself.
No, this is such an incredible initiative, Dakshima. You're definitely creating a safe society, a welcoming space for people,
Mhm.
right? So, if any of our listeners, who want to reach out to you, where they can connect with you.
Yeah, definitely. I have a couple of ways of connecting. My website is www.dilipani, that is dilipani.com, dilipani.com. Is my middle name. It means guided light. So I'm happy to be your
Mhm,
support and guided light. And also, if you go to Instagram, Dilipani, your guiding light. If you go to my website, you can see all the ways of connecting with me. There's an email address you can contact me. Many people contact through
mhm.
that. Yeah, that's the easiest way to contact me if you want to chat.
Okay, so all the links can be found in the show notes as well. So, for example, if somebody reaches out to you, Dakshima, via email, so how do you make sure that the person feels accepted, or what are the next steps for the person that he or she will follow?
Yeah, definitely. So, as I said, I have gone through unsafe environments before. So, whatever shared between that person and myself is between that person and myself, so that I can guarantee the confidentiality, because the email I have the access to, so I
Mhm,
can see how I can support that person, so I can
mhm,
email that person and set up a time, which is between myself and that person. It's not visible or showing to public. And whatever that person shares with me, whether that person want to proceed with me or not, would stay with me, because that's confidential
mhm,
information which I don't want to public. Like, for example, some celebrity in India want to talk to me and say, "Hi, Dakshima, blah blah blah," and it's safe with me. I'm not going to go to whatever X magazine and say, "Oh, this person came out to me." It's
mhm,
not going to happen. It's just, I guarantee safety, because when I came out, I was not safe, feeling safe initially, and I didn't like disclose everything to everybody initially, because I don't know whom to
mhm.
trust. So trust is the most
Yeah.
important thing in the work I do.
Yeah, and I remember you also sharing that you did share it with one of your family friends, and that person said you should consult the doctor because there might be something wrong with you, right?
Yes, it was not fun.
Okay, Lakshma. So now we are in the final segment of the podcast. I call it Beneath the Accent because we are knowing each other beneath the accent. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. You can answer them in one word or a sentence or however you feel like. The idea is just to know more about Dakshima. So, first, the classic question: what advice would you give to Dakshima, who is in the initial months of landing in Canada?
Life is going to be tough, but you're going to make it.
So, what's this one habit that you adopted that has changed your life?
I think going for long walks, listen to me while listening to music, it just helped me to like figure things out
Mhm.
sometimes.
Is this something you recently bought and you now regret?
I got a second hand car, which gave us a lot of trouble.
Okay. So, what is the most expensive thing that you own?
Me and my partner own the house.
Mhm.
We have mortgage. So
So, is there like the most expensive thing that you like to own?
most expensive thing I like to own would be a private jet.
Okay, interesting. So, if you had to describe yourself as an animal or any creature, what would it be and why?
It'll be a bear,
Mhm.
because I am big on the outside but soft and cuddly inside.
Nice. Okay. So, name three things on your bucket list.
Travel around the world,
Mhm.
travel around the world, and travel around the world with my partner, of course.
Love that. So, who's your go to person when you feel stuck?
Most of the time, my mom.
So, are there any movies that you like to watch again and again, over and over?
Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge, all time classic.
Okay.
I think I watched it when I was like 12
Mhm.
or 13, I don't know. And I still love it.
So, if you could have to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Rice with curries? I don't know, because I love it.
Okay. So, describe Canada in one word or a sentence.
Twisted.
Why would you say that?
because not what you expect.
Okay. So finally, if you could leave me with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Just be you.
Okay. So I just want to end with a quote that you shared on one of your platforms. I just want to conclude with that. And you call it your motto. It is, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. So on that note, Dakshima, thank you so much for being on the podcast and adding value to my listeners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grazis, for the invite. It's been a pleasure.
Hey listener, thank you for making it to the end. I highly appreciate you listening the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't as yet, and please share with your friends or anybody you think would like it. And like I always say, we encourage you to follow your heart, but also us on Instagram. The handle is mythicaccent. You can also leave us a review or write to us at hello@mythicaccent.com. So stay tuned and let's continue knowing each other beneath the accent.